Hi, I'm Ryan.
Hey, I'm Nate.
Hello, I'm Steve.
And we are Dungeon Vets, a group of... Fuck. And we are Dungeon Vets. And today we're going to be talking... Fuck.
Today on Book Talk, or today on Movie
Oh,
Talk.
yeah? Really?
Don't do Book Talk.
Not so easy, is it? And we are Dungeon Vets. And today we're doing a movie talk on one of my favorite movies, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Final movie in the Lord of the Rings series. We did The Fellowship and the Two Towers previously. So today we're going to be taking a look at Return of the King, looking at some of those elements and how they might apply in a Dungeons & Dragons setting, and what kind of stuff you can take from the Return of the King and apply it at your own table, in your own play style, whatever you like. Because D&D is all about stealing.
Last we left off, we basically just gave a bunch of ways you could steal certain scenes from the movie and put them in your campaign, so that's perfect. But we always start off with a rating, right?
That is the norm. That is,
okay.
What is it? That's our SOP. That's protocol.
Oh, jeez. Wow, we really are Dungeon Vets, huh? Isn't it?
Last time when we talked about the Two Towers, we sort of established that we were going to give ratings of the movies within the context of the Lord of the Rings, like comparing them to the other two, because I believe we determined for all of us, any Lord of the Rings movie it's going to be a 5 out of 5. Unless someone disagrees with that. Maybe this isn't a 5 for y'all. For me, when comparing it just like in general, it's 5 out of 5. I'm seeing disagreement in faces.
Looking at this movie series, this go-round in my life, actually evaluating it and thinking about it, I'm going to rate the Return of the King...
Steve. You be careful, Steve.
4 out of 5. 4.5 out of 5.
You're dead to me.
I didn't... It dragged. I felt like it didn't flow as well as the Two Towers.
Wait. Hold on. You did watch the extended edition, right?
Yes, I did.
Well, then yeah, it might drag on because it's an extra hour long.
No, it doesn't. The extended edition just adds in scenes that I think were necessary, but they couldn't because you can't release to theaters a 4-hour movie.
I just didn't like it as much. I think that the build-up to like the climactic finale was better in the Two Towers than in the Return of the King.
I will agree with that.
Aragorn and Gimli and them, they show up with the green wave and kill everybody instantly, but that's not the end of the movie. Then we have the March to the Black Gate distraction thing. Then there's endings after that as well. It just felt like it was kind of like clunkily ended, but I still loved it. It's still a great movie, one of the best ever. I just don't think that it's on par with Fellowship or Two Towers.
That's funny because I was going to say, now that I haven't watched The Return of the King in a while, because I always end up watching it and then I'll get through like Fellowship and then Two Towers and then something will come up and I won't be able to finish the series. Or it's just, can't really sit there for like 12 hours watching a movie series. But having watched it again, I said previously I think the Two Towers are my favorite. I have to amend that. Return of the King is my favorite. It's a 5 out of 5 for me, and I would adjust my rating as such of the Two Towers to like a 4.9. I like it. I like it a whole lot. I like all of the moments we get in Return of the King. I love epilogues. I like when a story is like finished, There's like the big bad evil guy is dead. Okay, end of movie. No, I like to see what happens after. I really like that kind of stuff.
Probably best epilogue ever, especially the movie version. Like the book version ends a little bit differently, but
Best epilogue ever? Have you watched The Sandlot?
Not in a long time.
Yeah, not in a really long time. But yeah, it's very well highlights coming back from war, which Tolkien lived through, and he just did an excellent job of incorporating the aspects of how you can't always come back. You can't always come all the way home, especially for someone like Frodo, and then them having to say goodbye to Frodo. Yeah, I thought the epilogue was just brilliantly done in the movie.
Well, for once we can agree this session, Steve.
What do you mean for once, God?
How about you, Ryan?
I'll give it like a 4 as well in the context of the Lord of the Rings movies. Otherwise, it's a 5 out of 5, of course.
Oh, thank goodness.
Two Towers is still my favorite movie of the three. I really do like that. The Fellowship is, the first movie is this almost whimsical, like the stakes are so not high at all Second is everyone goes and starts doing political stuff. And then the third movie, all this crazy stuff happens. But I found over and over, maybe it's because I've seen the movies before, or having to sit through 3+ hours of this. But man, I freaking did not care for Frodo's character at all. I disliked what he was doing, and I fully recognize that he is very strong and strong-willed and that he's able to resist the ring and all of that lore that goes into it. But I just, like, every time Frodo would come on screen, I'd be like, ugh. Like, give me another Arwen flashback. Let's go over to Aragorn fighting something. Let's, like, my God. Okay, it goes up the freaking mountain.
I will agree that the scenes that are not Frodo and Sam, I tend to enjoy more. And when it goes to them, I'm like, all right, let's do this. But I mean, that's not to say I dislike them. I like a lot of the moments that Frodo and Sam have. Sam, I love.
Yeah, of course.
Frodo,
Sam.
Yeah, he could be a bit of a dick. I think that, largely you could say that's the effect the ring is having on him. I mean,
Right.
he's having a real bad time.
No hate on him personally, Frodo, if you're listening. But it's just like just the on-screen watching it, I'm like, this is not as enjoyable, not nearly as enjoyable as the other scenes in the movie. And Sam, of course, is a great character, and I love watching Sam. And then at the very end, I'm going to disagree with you guys when they're sending Bilbo and Frodo off. Man, I didn't give a shit about them.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, and then when at the very end they're like, Frodo's like, I'm going too. I was like, all right. See ya.
I thought it was a very emotional moment that he had with the other hobbits and everything.
It was emotional, yeah, with him and the other hobbits, but like I just didn't like care. But when Sam got married, I was like, hell yeah, I love this. Sam's getting married. He's got his girl with the ribbons. He's doing what he always wanted to do. I was very happy about that.
I liked that Frodo wrote a book to go along with his uncle Bilbo's book.
Oh yeah,
I liked the moments with him and very old Bilbo. I mean, there's like one scene, but
yeah, when he was asking to see if he could see his ring again, I thought that was a very in character thing. It shows the lasting effect of someone who's held the ring for so long and how it makes them feel. And I really enjoyed the boys getting back in town from war, their year-long journey, their year-and-a-day journey. Getting back to the Shire, and they're like, we're changed men now. And they're in this tavern, and they're like, we've seen stuff.
Solemn cheers.
yeah, Merry and Pippin got freaking body counts now.
So, Ryan, I view the scene of Frodo and Bilbo getting on the boat, I view that more from Sam's perspective than from Frodo's perspective.
Yeah.
And I feel it's kind of an analogy for the fact that Sam, who went to war and did everything he possibly could to bring Mr. Frodo back home, couldn't do it. Sam is the audience more than anybody else, I think. And so that's why I liked the epilogue, because, you know, we're saying goodbye to these characters in a way, and the one character that gets to have like the happy ending is Sam.
Okay, I can see that point of view. I accept that. And it does add a little bit to the scene for me.
But it is the like fifth ending of the movie, so I can definitely appreciate being ready for it to be over.
Yeah. You say that. There's maybe like I could see it ending after the ring is destroyed quickly and not having this big epilogue. But you said like, oh, after the Battle of Minas Tirith, it's over. It's like, no, it's not.
I understood what you meant. You know, after the end of the Battle of Minas Tirith, I was like, all right, that's the climax. Even though I know what's going to happen. You know, they still got to go and toss in the ring, and Gollum's going to come back at the last second, of course. But all of that just felt like formality to me. Like, all right, these are the steps to end the series, rather than like the big climax is already over.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, that is definitely like the big battle, like you said, the big climax right there is Siege of Minas Tirith.
It's what brings all of our heroes together too. You have the final ride of the Rohirrim, and then you have Aragorn bringing the Green Wave in. That would be a kind of perfect culmination, but then they need to go. And so it's not quite as good as how the Two Towers culminated, I think. That's what I was really saying.
I think if it were the perfect ending for me would have been the scene where they all show up at Frodo's bed when he wakes up, and the big happiness and stuff happens, and then they cut to credits there.
And you don't get the epilogue.
That's enough epilogue for me. I can
disagree.
I can decide in my head where they all go.
I disagree, but I will say that is a somewhat acceptable ending point. You know, the story is over. Everything else after that is just gravy and goodbye.
All right. Don't we have other things to talk about?
You know, well, it's funny you say this though, and I'm gonna jump the gun a little bit here and say that my most D&D moment kind of has to do with this because I do think I imagine like this session. This is like their finale session that they do, right?
Yeah.
The DM said
14 hours
okay,
long.
we did this. Yeah, we did this big battle. Like, okay, it's been like 5 hours. We still have like all this stuff to do. Okay, we're gonna speed things up a bit. You're gonna go talk to this guy. You get a battle, your distraction. Go destroy the ring, and it's not like it's like super rushed, but it's like, okay, we're kind of skipping some things. It's not going to be as detailed of combat as like the one we just did. And then when the ring is destroyed, it's like, okay, we got to get this done with, guys. Yep, the ring's destroyed. The ground swallows up the rest of the evil army.
Yeah, it was a bit, just a lot. There's a lot. He said himself, there's a lot to do that session.
Yeah, normally we do the D&D moments kind of at the end, but I thought it was poignant to what we were talking about presently.
Fair enough. Should I just do mine now?
No, we don't care about yours.
Very well.
So let's go through the remaining sessions of this epic campaign. Last time, Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol got released by Faramir, and they're continuing on to Mordor. And Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, and Gandalf, and the people of Rohan ride up onto Isengard and meet back up with Merry and Pippin.
Yeah, we kind of start this session off kind of wrapping up the last one, the events of the last one, because they go and kind of take care of Saruman.
I personally think the Tower of Isengard and dealing with Saruman in D&D is an excellent opportunity to have a dungeon with a wizard bad guy at the very end. Use it, flesh it all the way out. You can easily just say that Merry and Pippin and the Ents, they couldn't get inside because we need magic to bypass some of the locks or whatever, so we needed Gandalf. And yeah, that's a lot of great content can be right in there.
That absolutely could be a whole, like you mentioned, a dungeon, like a mage tower dungeon. That could be a really cool setting for. You can add in all sorts of wacky stuff in a mage tower.
Wacky stuff like, get some more of that.
At least he hurls a fireball this time. That's like.
That reminds me, you could have a room. Like when the party goes into the room in which Gandalf and Saruman had this old man fight, there's so much remnant magic energy there that there are just ghosts of Gandalf and Saruman hurling each other across the room, and the players get stuck in all of it, and that's part of the encounter.
That's funny.
Gandalf starts getting flashbacks.
Also this sort of dungeon idea and everything also just is a good checkpoint in the journey. You know, after you do this is a great point for a level up. You can do a time skip of a month or two as everyone is traveling after this, right? Everybody's got to go to far different places after this battle, and so I think it's just a great natural end of a chapter.
Yeah, one of their last times to do something together as a party as well before things kind of split up.
Yeah, figure out what's next.
And how do they know what's next? Well, they get a hold of that there Palantir, Pippin of all people.
Oh, Peregrine Took.
Yeah, so the wisdom save that Pippin fails, maybe, and
I think he makes his wisdom save or whatever save it is, because he didn't give Sauron any information that was useful to Sauron.
Oh, I meant that draws him to go grab the thing in the first place.
Oh yeah,
you know,
to go look at it.
I think it's just a player.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like that could just be a curious PC, like just like I want to go mess with this thing again. Like sure, yeah.
Yeah,
but once you touch it,
you see it, and then the DM says, "Oh, Gandalf takes it from you and puts it right here, has it right next to him, covered up on his horse or on his bed." And you know Gandalf is a heavy sleeper, or all this stuff. You've been with Gandalf for so long, and then as he is the exposition machine, Pippin's player would be like, "I'm gonna go see what the Palantir's about."
Easy bait.
It's bait. Yeah, that's bait. That's DM bait.
And as a player, you should take that bait. But now they realize the enemy is preparing to attack the city of Minas Tirith in Gondor.
They really know how to build cities in this world.
They sure do. Well, they do in Gondor at least. Rohan, they're a little technologically behind in their architecture and construction notes. But I mean, that's just kind of their thing.
Rustic. Rustic folk of Rohan.
They're horse folk.
And you have this cosmopolitan, super rich Gondor.
Oh, and the fact that Pippin Sauron now thinks that Pippin has the ring, so he has to go with Gandalf, because he's in great danger.
and takes him to the one place he thinks is safest, right across the door from Mordor.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're saying that Pippin and Gandalf going before Denethor, lighting the beacon and all that. Maybe that's the events of a one-shot for Pippin's player, but otherwise it's happening off-screen for all of our other players.
Yep.
Okay, very well. But the beacon gets lit. Holy balls, some of those beacons are in some very remote places.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I would hate to be stationed there. Like, oh, yeah, you're going to be stationed at beacon number 6. We don't have any climbing equipment for you, so just... Or food, so good luck.
Dream about the taste of bread.
In D&D, this is very possible, you know? You get a magic dome and then create food and water. And you'd be like, well, this sucks, but I can do it. And whenever the things are lit, given it's a clear, like a nice day that you can see both ends of the chain, you can be like, oh, and then prestidigitation.
I so want to throw that in a setting. Just you come across this like magic dome with just a couple of dudes on post it who are bored as hell and just happy to see someone else.
I like that. That'd be pretty funny. And you guys are just here? Like, how long are your shifts? 6 months. By the way, do you know what the date is?
Oh, no. They would know. They would be counting down the days.
Prison scratches on the wall.
Inside the dome.
Yeah. You never lose track of exactly how many days it is until you get off and post.
It's true. It is most of the math you do in your head.
Okay, but Frodo and Sam and Smeagol probably are going through some sessions, I feel like, because they got some good stealth, survival, keep food, making exhaustion rolls, lots of cool things you can have them doing. And you also have the role-playing aspect. Sam is suspicious of Smeagol. Frodo is starting to fail wisdom saves.
Yeah, at this point, you're kind of working with essentially a hostile NPC, you know?
Well, we said that Smeagol is a PC, right?
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah, it's Boromir's player.
Oh, that's right. It was Boromir's character that came back.
Boromir, the RP god.
The RP
reincarnated
god, yes.
as Smeagol.
God, what an interesting RP scenario this would be. Like, trying to, like, mess with the mind of one while stay out of, like, you know...
The DM at this point...
The ire of...
You know, he watched the Call of Cthulhu one shot and is, like, going to bring in some insanity checks for Frodo.
Oh, yeah. I love that kind of thing, like the sanity meter, similar things to that. I think it's pretty cool. It has a place.
And so Smeagol, we see in a conversation with Gollum in the river. I like to think of this as maybe Smeagol has a warlock level, and he has a patron that is the ring. Maybe it's just insanity, and the DM is working with them. You can flavor it how you would like, I think, depending on the player you have at the table you have. But I definitely think that the player that's running Smeagol is now working with the DM and is like, yeah, I want to betray them. I'm going after the ring. And that can lead to so many cool moments in your table. Just make sure you, the DM, are operating with everyone behind the scenes so that you know what's going on. But yeah, Smeagol has turned.
Totally. It's so fun. It's so fun to do. Especially when you get a player that's like, who can make it close. Is like, oh, I could probably kill both of them, but do I want to necessarily, or do I want to make this part of the cool story in which they are more developed by my death?
I would love to play I would love to play Frodo or Smeagol. I don't know that I would find playing Sam as fun, although it still would.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in that campaign.
You probably wouldn't either.
But it is cool. I did really enjoy the stealth scenes that they had to make, and they went through their own dungeon. Really appreciated that, you know. And then if you're trying to do a delivery quest sequence like this, make it dense, you know. They can see the ending in sight. There's Mount Doom right there. There's the lava. And they're like, bam, here are all the obstacles. 10,000 orcs.
A Nazgul, who again we see is super incompetent.
A Nazgul, a lighthouse that is trying to find you. And you're getting misled and going into an extra dungeon by one of the players. So that's dense. Like, they do a lot over a very short distance. Oh, and then, you know, climbing the mountain, number 5, where at this point, Frodo has got 3 levels of exhaustion, and Sam has to start risking his levels of exhaustion to carry Frodo the rest of the way up. And then, bam, the player's back. He was hiding under the table this whole time, comes back,
This also really, I think the first and only, maybe the only time those three players, I guess, but specifically Sam and Frodo get some combat, and a lot of it. I mean,
it is a lot in this movie for them.
Yeah.
I think that the dungeon of Shelob's cave can be expanded more and ends with fighting Shelob, definitely. In D&D, I don't know that Sam and Frodo actually split up, or if they do, it's probably just the events of a one-shot, because if you're expanding the cave, the dungeon of Shelob's cave, then you probably want both players to be able to appreciate that at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, they can both still fight Shelob and hurt Shelob, and Frodo is still stung by Shelob, and that can still lead into the events of going into the Orc Tower, the prison tower.
This is some gritty survival stuff, too, because they never get back to full health. They never get a full night's rest.
Yeah.
Not since Smeagol threw away all the lembas bread.
This is a slightly goofy campaign in which, they can start fights between the orcs as a reliable way of getting out of things, which is funny. The way they start the fight between the orc and the Uruk-hai in the tower, and then it just collapses down every level of the tower into just chaos, and then you hear just them fighting and fighting.
Did they really start the fight in the tower, though? I think that was just really convenient for them.
Okay, yeah.
And then Sam in the hallway just looking like a big and scary shadow. What an intimidation check that was.
But, that being... I was thinking about this at the time. I'm like, this being the Doom... This army that is going to spread and kill everyone is so disorganized at all times.
I mean, the contrast we get between them, invading their amphibious landing at Osgiliath and then sliding over them, and then just dicking around at a tower, just infighting. I mean, I guess it's the difference between, your army that you're actually setting out to fight and these dudes who you left back to guard a tower.
That is one thing I do like about the Lord of the Rings universe, is that they're funny.
Yes.
They don't take themselves super seriously.
Yeah. It was like a bar fight in a sitcom. Somebody bumps into you, hey, and you immediately just bash him with something, and then somebody else, and the whole tower, the entire tower, minus 7 people, dead.
They use that later, though. They're like, oh, these dudes fight all the time. So when they're in disguise, they're just like, just act like we're fighting. That'll work.
Yeah, then it's used, and I like that. People with low strength, halfling or not, if they're in this massive plate armor meant for someone super heavy, give them those exhaustion checks or those strength checks to see if they can even keep walking with it on.
Actually, we've seen pretty reliably that that's pretty much cardboard, so I don't think it would be that heavy.
That's a good point.
You know what the first thing that happens in Osgiliath when they're landing? Do you remember?
As an arrow gets shot through plate.
The orc shoots an arrow straight through the breastplate, a plate breastplate of a dude. It just goes down.
Well, you've seen how it looks. That stuff is aluminum.
Maybe if it was literally foil.
Yeah, aluminum foil.
It's foil over cardboard. All right, that's my whining about plate armor for this talk.
Okay.
I gotta fit it in there somewhere.
Because this movie is just rife with weapons being OP and armor being nonsense.
There's a lot of hitting people with swords and then they just fall down. I understand they're trying to keep it at a certain rating though and not include a bunch of gore and stuff, which I think is the right move for this. It's a fun fantasy movie.
You got to work with what the rules have been set as in order to make the movie accessible and make it PG-13.
Yeah, it's you can't really compare this to something like Game of Thrones that does take its tactics and realism seriously within its universe. And then this is, we see what would have been the end of the Dothraki essentially. And they came out just fine.
Yeah, I give Lord of the Rings a pass. And honestly, I think if they went super gritty and gory and crazy with it, I don't think it would have been nearly the same. I think it would have suffered for it.
It wouldn't hit. Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely think you give these halflings, which are well established to not have high strength levels, at least these 2 halflings, you give them disadvantage on stealth checks, and they are living off of stealth checks in this country. So you would have to be very cautious about every decision and roll that you made.
It'd be fun as a player, right?
It would be fun. The tense stakes, man.
I mean, it's a bit of a trade-off. Now you have a disguise, but...
Yeah, make a performance check. How deep does your voice go?
I don't know. The orcs don't have that deep voices. Maybe the Uruk-hai do. The orcs are kind of...
Yeah, they're a big goblin-like, huh?
It's definitely not Mr. Frodo.
Sam is just a very soft voice, doesn't he?
But so if we're going to keep going with Sam and Frodo, they get a distraction that helps them able to get through the rest of Mordor. But we already had Sam and Frodo versus Smeagol a little bit in the cave with Shelob. And this DM decided that, oh, you knocked him over this long hole and he falls all the way down, and that ends combat. You can't even see him. And you're going to have to go to another room, and I'll come talk to you, Smeagol, in a second about whatever happened to you.
I would just know that he'd be coming back.
So would I. Yeah, you got to know.
And that's a player
the
character?
Players have to know. When you don't tell them, yeah, you can see the body,
Yeah,
0 hit
exactly.
points. And that's exactly what happens. And he jumps on Sam, makes the athletics check to carry Frodo, and then Sam, what's your AC?
9.
And the door bursts open over there, and Smeagol's character's just like, I'm back.
Speaking of doors bursting open, was anyone else chanting Grand along with?
Oh,
the
yeah,
movie?
absolutely. Every time.
Grand was not in the theatrical cut, and
Oh, really?
no, it wasn't. So
Not at
I was
all.
like, who's Grand? And then I was like, oh, they named the battering ram. Wow, okay,
Grand,
cool.
Grand,
Enormous piece
Grand,
of siege work.
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, that's why they named it, sure. But I like to think that in the face of actually destroying the ring inside of Mount Doom, Frodo's character, with his wisdom modifier, he probably has to roll like a 19 or a nat 20 in order to make this.
Here's my question. Like, do you just leave that down to one roll, this big final culminating moment? Like, how would you handle that?
I would let them do what they want. How they've gone through this entire campaign. How do you end it? You get the choice.
Interesting.
If you want to jump in there
You wouldn't leave it up to a roll then.
at that point, maybe before they go in, but once you're in and like there it is and you're making those steps, one of the rules of DMing is don't let someone roll something you're not prepared for them to fail.
Yeah.
And what is your recourse if he fails it?
I mean, he does fail it, arguably.
So your assertion then is that Frodo's player decides to keep the ring on his own.
It's kind of what his character would do, right?
I don't think so.
He's been corrupted for how long?
Yeah, but I think it's been established that he's under the influence of something that he doesn't believe in or love.
I don't know. I think you can interpret it a bunch of ways. I feel like if it were me, I would like to have the choice.
Yeah.
After having made, and then if I was a DM, like I would like for them to choose how they want to end this whole journey.
I think it would depend on the table. Depend on your player. I mean, it always does. It's kind of a cop-out
Sure,
answer, but I might make it a roll, and it could still be like I think I would be as a DM prepared for them to fail, and I think they do, and they handle it pretty interestingly. However, especially if I know that I'm about to spring Smeagol on them, and this player's coming back, and if I had that like planned, I might even say you're having a real hard time throwing the ring in, and you sort of hesitate. That's kind of, I would normally hate to do that and take player agency away, but if I had this kind of thing planned, I might.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of,
Totally, that would be a good setup. That would be a great setup. And if I were Sam's player and Frodo's player failed the save, I would do what Elrond should have done, however long ago, and shove his ass at disadvantage because he was invisible into the lava.
Totally, 100%.
Like, sorry, Mr. Frodo, you weren't gonna go back anyway.
And this is why I think it is a roll.
Agree, I think it is.
I think the DM is prepared for Frodo to fail this roll because there are still 2 other players in this encounter that have agendas. Sam doesn't want that to happen. He doesn't want Frodo to do that. And Smeagol wants the ring as well. So in this, probably you're in initiative. It's like a combat encounter. Just like you're fighting the big bad at the very end, and you know that if you don't make this roll on this turn, he's going to get to attack again, and he's going to almost definitely hit you, and this is like the last attack that you're going to be able to hit. You got to be allowed to miss an attack roll, and you got to be okay as a DM for your player to fail that roll. And here, I think Frodo rolls, he fails, and so it's like, Frodo, you decide to keep the ring. You decide to put the ring on, thereby starting the clock in the initiative count for when people are going to start showing up to kill you guys. And the next thing that happens is Smeagol makes a really good perception check to find Frodo, pounces on him, and attacks him. And I think that then the players come up with the brilliant idea to instead push Smeagol so that they don't have to make a wisdom save.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
That's how I interpreted what happened.
Yeah, as far as imagining that happening at an actual table with actual players, I think it might be a little bit different. But as we're interpreting the events of the movie, yeah, of course, it was great. It was a great ending.
Ending.
Ending 2 of 7.
What was the first ending? I guess
Minas Tirith.
Minas Tirith, huh? Yeah.
And then, so Smeagol officially dies. Dex save for Frodo to grab the ledge or something. Sam's able to pull him up.
I might even just narrate that.
Maybe not, yeah. At that point, yeah, you might not be prepared for him to fail that one. It's a good point.
This is kind of like, you've done it. You've done the MacGuffin thing. This was your ultimate quest goal, and now here's what happens. Here's the resulting stuff.
Boromir Smeagol just sit there in that chair for 4 more hours, and we'll be out of here in no time.
Well, I think this is all, their stuff is running concurrently.
Yeah, this bit didn't happen before all the Battle of Minas Tirith. We're just following party by party.
The rest of the players are off in Mordor right now, fighting an unwinnable fight. Or are they? At the table, I don't think they are.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
That's just too much to run.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Like, they have had their finale. Their finale is Minas Tirith.
The D&D finale for sure.
It's like, after Minas Tirith, you ask them, so what do you guys do? I'm like, we're going to go try to help the boys.
Yeah.
And they go do that. That's all just narrative, just like the stuff at Minas Tirith was with Denethor and all that.
Agreed. All right. But before we get there, let's talk about how they get there.
The boys?
Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, yeah.
Let's go. The hunters.
So I wanted to say that in the early part of the movie, after Gandalf leaves, I think that in D&D, you could give them some content that's part of this raising an army, and you could have stuff for them to do. For example, maybe Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas ride around with Éomer to collect more people and to raise an army. You go to 3 towns, and at each of the towns, you have to do a different sort of encounter to prove your worth, and however well you do affects the number of people that you get.
But it could be just a one session where you guys are fast traveling around the places and doing these checks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that I would make a whole session out of just that unless there was more to add in, but it could definitely be part of this longer sort of travel session,
prep.
Things like that. Yeah, it's prep stuff.
Prep for the finale.
Prep sessions are fun.
And then Narsil gets reforged.
Yeah.
Yeah, in D&D, maybe it's not the king and a royal sword and everything. Maybe it's just magic weapons for the party to go to the underground dungeon.
Your old pal Elrond shows up, and he's like, yo, I heard you're having a rough time, so here's some cool shiny weapons. All right, see ya.
Or yeah, maybe the weapons are some kind of, they're from some kind of organization or an oath taken by these old elven guys who died, and they have this power from this prophecy. Hey, by the way, if you want, you could go maybe get some help from those undead guys.
Elrond, do you think you could send some of those elves again? No. Okay, he's already gone. All right, no elves for us this time, I guess.
We got lucky. We got lucky in Helm's Deep.
It always made me laugh. Of here's the big battle for the fate of the earth, and the elves are like, we're just gonna head out.
I like to imagine that Elrond just had 2 speeches ready, and one was the Age of Men, and one was the Age of Orcs.
like Reagan with the the landing on the moon thing, whether it succeeded or failed in both. Yeah, I could totally.
And I'm playing both sides, so I always come out on top.
I noticed that Gimli calls both Legolas and Aragorn lad and laddie, but Aragorn is 87. We learned in the Two Towers. And Legolas is even older.
Gimli's, I think he's 130 something.
Oh, well. All right.
Gimli's up there, man. Dwarves in Middle-earth live a long time.
Gimli is 140. Legolas is 2,931.
Oh, Legolas is a little bit older. Okay, that's, Legolas is fucking 3,000 years old. Jesus. I should know this, being a Lord of the Rings nerd, but...
Galadriel is...
She's been around since the beginning of time.
Before the moon was born.
Yeah.
But they go to this underground dungeon in order to get to undead army, right? I would expand that more than what's in the movie, not just a persuasion check, basically. Maybe you have to fight some undead king and beat him in order to get his army.
I just want to say one more thing quickly on the age stuff. How old is Arwen?
I got it. She's a half elf, right? So
No.
Okay. She's 2,901. So she's 30 years younger than Legolas.
All right, so Arwen and Aragorn. In Middle Earth, do you still, like when you're working with elves, do you still do like the half your age plus 7 thing, or does it work a little bit differently when we're talking thousands of years old?
I think it's just weird, and that's kind of the at this point that we're recording this, a few of the episodes of Ring of Power have come out, and there's been with Arondir, the Black Elf, and some of the issues with him and that one lady that he fancies, is that he's been stationed in that place for 70 years, and so he has seen ostensibly seen her basically as a baby and then grown up to who she is now, and then is that weird that they're together? Because that's like grooming, but like way longer period of time. They're both mentally adults.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty important distinction.
I do like the whole idea, though. I think this is actually in the PHB, or maybe I read this online. I don't know. It's somewhere. If your parentage, like if your parents are just both half elves, then whatever. You're both living to be 250. You're all living to be 250. But if one of your parents is a human and one of your parents is an elf, that's still an 80 years human and then a 750 years elf. That more than likely means that elven parent is going to watch their offspring die.
Yeah.
And in one of the books, wherever the hell I read this, there was a scenario where the mother bore the child and then abandoned them because she couldn't reckon with the fact that she was eventually going to watch her child die. And it was an interesting plot point in someone's backstory because of the logistics of these interracial couplings.
Totally. Definitely something to think about.
We even do the same thing with dwarves and humans.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we have half dwarves?
Because Wizards of the Coast are cowards.
Yeah.
That's the best answer. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Steve. We were talking about their little the undead dungeon.
Yeah, cool content. They have these magic weapons now that allow them to fight the ghosts, zombies, whatever they may be.
True.
And
how convenient.
By defeating the king at the end of the dungeon, they're able to claim the army for themselves.
Yeah, maybe he refuses to listen to them until he is subdued, and then he realizes that, these people are from this pact I made a long time ago. You beat him into his senses, and he's like, all right, we got your back. But you got to promise to let us go at the end of this. And Aragorn's like, yeah, totally, man, I'll do it.
Also a good opportunity as a DM if you'd like to show some history, depending on how long you think these dudes have been dead here.
Lore dump.
Yeah, it's lore dump time.
Lore dump time. Who doesn't love a good lore dump?
I love a good lore.
Yeah, and you can have tons of undead are just great enemies in general. They're so varied. Imagine you could have a banshee, and then you could have other spirits, and then zombies, and then maybe some vampiric stuff in there. You could throw in so many different things in with whatever theme you're going for. Undead are just so fun and varied that way. And then maybe you have other denizens of the cave. Maybe there's traps.
More DMs should use more undead. Throw your clerics a bone once in a while.
But yeah, I think it's a shame they skipped over it. But I think they didn't really skip over it. There just wasn't much there. It was the king going to talk to the undead king.
Afterwards, the cool little combat encounter that doesn't have to be extensive at all as they hijack those pirate ships.
Oh, yeah, which are conveniently just, boom, right there as you come out of this dungeon. And then also the funniest part in the movie by far, of course, is when Aragorn's fire a warning shot and Gimli nudges it.
Well, oh, right, yes, well, we warned you, so, yeah.
What does he say? He's like, oh, watch your aim, Legolas.
Yeah, mind your aim.
Does it? Yeah.
Yeah, mind your aim. I'd forgotten about that scene.
I think that could be half a session is charging the ship with your undead army.
Yeah.
I think
because once you bring them out, it's basically over. The undead army it seems like they can one-shot enemies, basically. That's why they're so powerful. Just touching them withers a living being and kills them.
Which makes you wonder how you won in the first place to even get to...
So maybe, yeah...
Let's now look. Don't look into it too much. Don't look into it.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, we get to the Battle of Gondor then. The Battle of Minas Tirith.
And we got Oliphants.
Big old Oliphants.
We got Grond. The inside of the city is in shambles. If there are PCs in there, that's a lot of fun. It's basically just another Helm's Deep.
Yeah, I think that if there are PCs in the city, they're doing basically what Pippin does in following Gandalf around. And you can narrate it exactly as it happens in the movie, that Gandalf essentially just has to take control of the defense because Denethor is unreliable.
Denethor is like the most detestable character in this fucking series, I think. I hate him so much.
The way he eats those cherry tomatoes, ugh.
God, yeah. Everything about him is just
He's
awful.
listening to a nice song. He's listening to Pippin sing, and he's just like, blah, 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 blah.
As after he just sent his son to almost certain death.
I really like the concept that there might be PCs following Gandalf around, because there's a lot of content on the screen that we see happen.
There's a lot to do in the city.
Defend the wall when they start coming over on the siege towers. You have catapults launching every round. They eventually get a short rest, but then you have to go defend the gate against numerous trolls, which probably then becomes an escape scene where you have to retreat to the second level.
You got Nazgul flying around on their wyverns.
Yeah, and I think that fight could be really cool. The Witch King versus Gandalf on the terrace.
Which is quite different in the books. The Witch King would not fuck with Gandalf. Gandalf is like 3 or 4 tiers above the Witch King in power. And there's no way the Witch King could break his staff. It was kind of a weird thing to put in the movie. It was cool, don't get me wrong. But it's kind of weird. Like, the Witch King is like, I will break him. And like, no, the Witch King would be terrified of Gandalf.
I wanted to bring this up earlier, but if you're running a big siege battle like that, and you still want to have players have more opportunities than just wherever they are, I think it's fun to make the players roll for the bad guys and for the good guys. And then if the bad guys win, they get through the gate, and now you have to deal with that. Everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. I can't stop punching you in the face. Or you get a player who's like, I just want to kill everyone. And
I like the idea maybe of doing contested roles, and the players can do various things, either in their prep or now, to basically give themselves a bonus to these roles versus wherever the baddies are rolling.
yeah,
In D&D, though, I think it is pretty cool to have the Witch King on par with this, otherwise what has been a really powerful, really important DM NPC.
Agreed.
And it's on par with when Gandalf fought the Balrog. And you get to have this cool moment where you as the DM, you love this NPC, you brought him back to life, for fuck's sake. And so you get to play with him a little bit in this epic battle and show him off a little bit. And I think that there are probably players that are helping fight the Witch King, but it gets interrupted, I think, and I think the DM planned this the whole time to interrupt it with Rohan arriving.
I think that's a great idea, especially with what we see before, because he wants like Éowyn to have like her cool moment, and the idea of like this big Witch King boss dude being weakened a little bit during his fight before, so that Éowyn has a chance against him, I think would make a lot more sense and would be pretty cool. Kind of explain that despite the power disparity, she's still able to take him down.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, good job.
When we translate this into D&D, you probably bring in the Rohirrim and Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas and the undead army at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more epic.
And then everybody's in the battle at the table all at the same time. In this way, Aragorn can be a part of killing the Witch King.
Yeah, you do have the party like showing up right there, the rest of the party. So that could be a group fight against the Witch King instead of just Éowyn having her badass moment. And Merry.
Yeah, and to be honest, by translating that into D&D, the fight between Éowyn and the Witch King isn't a great D&D fight. She decapitates the wyvern right away, and
yeah, like easily,
and then
barely an inconvenience.
The wyverns are useless. They're so useless. The Nazgul are useless. Ugh.
We finally get a Nazgul that seems to be like, oh, fuck, now this dude, he's intimidating. He's going to do some
He's
shit.
swinging that flail with gusto, not just slowly reaching, you know? And you know why he is the Witch King of Angmar? Because he has more accomplishments than any Nazgul ever. He poked Frodo on Weathertop. That's it. That's all he's ever done. That's all any Nazgul has ever done.
Sauron gave him a ton of medals for that.
He's like, you're now the Witch King. That's a cool fight, though. Big flail and a sword. Probably his screech frightens you, or maybe it blinds, deafens you, something, you know. Cool combat.
The wyvern probably isn't taking care of that easily.
Yeah, it could come in and out like a layer action or something.
Or just have it like fight there on the ground. Just because with the action economy, it's really hard to run a difficult encounter where you just have one enemy against all your players. So always good to throw in some like minions or something like that. Or
Well, it's the chaos of battle, so you can always just bring orcs in.
totally.
Like that general guy who fought briefly in there too. What?
Gothmog.
That's his name. I knew you would remember it.
Jank ass leg and
Jank ass face.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I would have the chaos of the battle be at at initiative 20 every single time. That's the layer action, is just the chaos of the battle. You take a stray hit from a sword, or you get bumped and you have to make a strength save to see if you stay up.
An Oliphant walks past
An
you.
Oliphant walks past you. This is your one roll, otherwise you die.
It's like save or die.
On that note, I don't think Legolas is a part of the battle with the Witch King. Legolas gets his own little epic fight versus the Oliphant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that player is like, I'm going to take one of those down. And then it takes him like 6 turns to do it, but he does it.
And so in that moment, the DM, you should split it up. Ryan has done this a few times. He's really good at it. And so you're just handling the players fighting the Witch King for like 3-4 rounds of combat. And then you go to Legolas versus the Oliphant for 3-4 rounds. And then you go back, and then you go back. And Legolas, with being only one player, that'll run really quickly, in fact. You can probably just get it over within a couple of minutes. And I think he makes a great intelligence check or something to realize, hey, if I cut this rope, it'll bring the whole saddle down. And the DM rewards him for that. And so, a little over the top in a movie, I must say, a little over the top. I'm with Team Gimli, well, it still only counts as one. But in D&D, totally, absolutely, bring the whole thing down.
It's rule of cool. Yeah, and especially when you isolate these scenarios, if one of these players are just in a sort of off on their own thing, it almost comes off as cinematic to everybody else when it's just you and another player going back to back to back. And then in the span of 3 minutes, 3 turns have gone by, and you're like, damn, a bunch has just happened.
Yeah, and it's especially because that player would have had to work for that, climbing that thing. There's a bunch of dudes up there. Passing an investigation check to check out the mechanism or something, which would be a smart thing to do on the player's part. And then give them something cool, give them something badass after all that.
Legolas's player is so good. It's so cool.
Yeah.
You're 3,000 years old. You can show off.
So that is that basically brings us to the end of the Battle of Minas Tirith. And
yeah, the Witch King's dead.
Army's been routed by the Green Wave
and the Rohirrim. Don't forget the Rohirrim. What a cavalry charge. What a whole scene.
It's a lot of freaking horses, man.
Very cool in the book, different in the book, but really, really cool in both. Love Theoden in this movie. I love Theoden in general. He's one of my favorite characters probably, but in this movie he really, really shows his character and his badassery.
Yeah, Rohan's got a lot of horses.
A lot of badasses on them horses too. Yeah, that I love that. So we hear the music, the swelling thing, this cool speech, and then the music cuts out when the charge happens, and when you just when the impact happens, you just hear crushing of armor, stomping of hooves. One of the greats, maybe the best cavalry charge in a movie.
If you're going to take inspiration from this, I think you should look at Éomer's killing of an elephant with just a javelin throw. I think you could really do something with that. Letting a player try to make that disadvantage throw or something, and then when they are successful in doing it, topples off a huge thing, destroys a bunch of enemies, goes into one elephant, goes into a second elephant.
Well, what are y'all's feelings on called shots? Okay, I want to do something, and this is going to be really difficult, so this can't just be a normal attack roll. So
I almost feel like it's when you're playing pool or billiards, and you're calling the shot at the very end. You have to call where the 8-ball goes, and if you miss or you get it in the wrong pocket, there are consequences.
Okay, yeah, I like that. So instead of just okay, sure, it'll be a disadvantage, you actually sort of throw something a little more interesting in the mix.
Yeah, or in billiards, you lose, so your character just has an aneurysm.
Yeah, you might land the javelin shot, or you might have a stroke and die.
No, but it opens, maybe doing this is kind of reckless, and it opens you up to everyone just gets an opportunity attack on you immediately, even though you're not moving. Or it's a reckless sort of thing, even though you're not a barbarian, and everyone gets advantage on you if you miss the called shot.
Yeah. I like that implementation of called shots. I do think it's something that should be used like in great moderation because your players get a little carried away. Your players want to do it all the time. It gets a little janky. But for those big, cool moments, whip it out.
Well, so on that note, what was our most D&D moments of the movie?
I already said mine. So
I think Aomer one-shotting that Oliphant is a super D&D moment because in real life, it's pretty fucking unbelievable, I must say. That is an incredible throw. Amazing.
I feel like it would be possible. It'd have to be a really strong throw. Maybe a human would not be strong enough to hurt.
I think it would be possible had he been riding at full speed, but he wasn't. He was stationary.
Yeah.
And he was on horseback, which means he couldn't even plant his feet in a way to actually throw it and move his
right.
hips.
That's just like, dude, Aomir's just got like, what is that, like lats and shoulder delts
Yeah.
for fucking days. It's just...
Cannon.
Aomir was on the Rohirrim baseball team. He was their pitcher, so...
You just juiced up before the fight.
That's why he's so angry all the time. The others...
That special juice.
Aomir needs a special juice before battle.
For me, I think the most D&D moment was Frodo and Sam looking down at the 10,000 orcs, Mount Doom in the background. And there possibly the DM might have been saying, you should look for another way. And then Sam was like, we got to go down there. All right, clearly this is the way where you will probably die. And Sam's character is like, fastest way to Mount Doom's a straight line, baby. And they almost die for it.
That's a good one. I learned this the other day because I watched a YouTube video from Overly Sarcastic Productions. They produce a series called Trope Talk, which is very entertaining and informative. I would recommend it to anybody. And I just watched an episode on Deus Ex Machinas and that storytelling tactic, which in our day and age is mostly derided and not well received.
Mostly.
But apparently, Tolkien was well aware of the problem that the Eagles presented to his entire story, and he was very nervous about including them in any respect. Apparently the lore behind it, maybe Nate, you can help me out a little bit, is that they're like flighty and unreliable, basically, which is why you couldn't just have them order them around and to do whatever.
No, so what it is Mordor actually has like a bunch of AAA batteries around it, and the Eagles couldn't get in until they took out those air defenses by throwing the ring into Mount Doom. Like there's like SAM sites, everything. It's so weird. They have nothing else. It's just anti-air. Yeah, Tolkien knew. No, there is. I can't remember the exact.
Oh, what? It was a joke? You got me.
God damn it.
Yeah, they're like flighty and weird, and I believe there are reasons that it would be extremely dangerous for the Eagles to fly over Mordor.
If I remember, yeah, it's a deal that Gandalf made, but that doesn't mean like they're still animals. They still do whatever they want. They don't have to help whenever they're summoned.
Yeah.
But also, there's a bunch of angry wyverns.
Indeed. Yeah, they got those for one. Also, the Eagles, yeah, like kind of you mentioned, they have their own thing. Like, they don't necessarily give a shit about the problems of men.
I did want to talk about this before we end this session. If you're players, if you're Frodo and Sam, at what point do you stop believing that there's a return trip, or do you always believe there's a return trip? And is it more fun if you realize your characters aren't going home?
I think probably in the beginning, I would be like, okay, yeah, we'll have an adventure and we'll come back to the shot. Kind of like I think Frodo goes through, and probably Sam as well. Like, once we get like into Mordor itself and I start seeing like all this shit and what we had to do just to get here, I'll be like, yeah, we ain't coming back out the other way of this. And I do think that's fun. Knowing your characters on a suicide mission, that can be so fun.
I agree. I'm a player that really loves stakes and I love emotion to run high in the session. And we are all well aware of all the many different ways that the DM/writer/director can save the heroes, right? So there's always that thing in the back of our heads. We could be totally happy with a glorious death. That's always great. But being saved at the last moment is also always great. So you as the player, you either get to make that decision of acceptance, or you get to like fight to the bitter end. And if you're the DM seeing them fight to the bitter end, maybe throw them a bone. But I think that these players, they own it and accept it as they're not going home. And I don't think I would either.
They do, and I think in some cases,
yeah.
If I'm taking my character on like this glorious last stand, the suicide mission, I wouldn't want to be saved by the DM by some miraculous thing. But not always. Like in this case, I would have accepted it as a suicide mission, but when the DM swoops in and magically saves us, I would be satisfied with that. I wouldn't feel robbed in this particular case.
I think I also agree, yeah. The point of this question was if you're DMing and you create a scenario in which the party is probably not going to return from, you think it is best for the party to organically figure that out themselves rather than the DM
totally
be like, okay, so continuously raise these stakes, and then eventually the party is going to be like, well, how are we going to get out of this? Something like that.
Ideal scenario, it dawns on them eventually, and maybe they can even RP and talk about it some. If they're really just not getting it, maybe you can drop some hints or something. But yeah, I definitely don't like the idea of you saying like your PCs aren't coming back from this; they're going to die.
I don't like that either. Yeah,
let them figure it out, even if you have to nudge them in the right direction.
I do think you would need to give hints though, because I think by and large D&D players expect to heroically save the day and go back home, and so I do think you should give bits of evidence for them to grab onto.
Absolutely.
But don't just decide for them.
This is very insightful.
Oh, no.
Oh, great.
I mean, I don't know. Do whatever you want to me.
But no, I think that is very good information for any DMs out there. I think it's just a very poignant type of campaign ending, and you should know the psychology of the players before getting into it.
Yep. As always, it comes down to know your table. The last thing I wanted to talk about was so we get a pretty lengthy epilogue, as we discussed early on in Lord of the Rings. We get to see kind of how each character get on with their lives, and I like that. And now in our campaigns, Ryan, you've always asked us, even like in the short ones, to write epilogues for our characters, and I like that. I think everyone should do that. If you're one of them lucky folks who get to play through a campaign all the way to the end, yeah, do an epilogue, man. If they're not all dead on a suicide mission.
I agree. You don't need to play it out like what kind of happens at the end of the movie here, but every player can just write a paragraph about what their character ends up doing for the rest of their life, and so definitely do epilogues. Do backstories and do epilogues.
Players, you have to be creative sometimes too. Do it. Don't put it all on your DM.
Throw your DM a bone.
Yeah.
That has been our movie talk on Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. We did it. We completed the campaign of The Lord of the Rings.
Thanks so much for listening.
See you next time.
Bye.